Hi guys, Miss Francis here. Today we're going to discuss surface area to volume ratio. I'd like to start the discussion by talking about how prokaryotes divide, and then we'll get into why they divide. So prokaryotes are going to divide by a process called binary fission, where first the cell is going to elongate itself. Then the cell is going to replicate, make an identical copy, and then the cell is going to split into two identical daughter cells. So those daughter cells are identical to each other, and they're identical to the mother cell. Here's an actual image of binary fission occurring, where my prokaryote is going to split into two. You can see the pili are visible very clearly, and this is what it would look like underneath a microscope. Here's another picture showing binary fission occurring in a prokaryote. So let me pose this question to you. Which dissolves faster, sugar cubes or the crystals of sugar? Why do you think that happens? What's going to go cold faster? Your French fries sitting on a plate or a baked potato sitting on a plate? And why would that be? Well, it all leads back to surface area to volume ratio, which ties back to one reason why a prokaryote is going to divide. So obviously prokaryotes need to divide in order to reproduce and maintain the species, but a prokaryote is also going to divide in order to maintain its surface area to volume ratio. So as a cell increases in its size, the volume of that cell increases faster than its surface area. And we don't want that. What we want is a high surface area to volume ratio, because that's going to enable life processes to occur. It's going to enable oxygen to enter and nutrients to enter and water to enter. And it's going to enable that organism to get rid of carbon dioxide waste, heat, and other cell products that they do not want in their cell. So the volume of the cytoplasm determines the need for that exchange, where if I am a larger organism, it doesn't mean that I have larger cells. It just means that I have more cells. So here's a picture showing why surface area to volume ratios are important to the limitation of cell size. So if we look here, this small block has a surface area to volume ratio of 6:1. That's what we want. It's a higher surface area to volume ratio. Whereas this larger block has a surface area to volume ratio of 2:1. That's pretty low. We do not want that. And that is because if we look at the diffusion pathway in a smaller surface, in a larger surface area to volume ratio organism versus a smaller surface area to volume ratio organism, this organism has a shorter diffusion difference, so the pathways are more efficient in order for the reactions to take place. Right? So how do organisms maximize their surface area to volume ratio? Well, first of all, as organisms grow, those cells divide like we saw in binary fission. It's going to allow for cell differentiation. It's going to allow for specialized functions, especially in these more complex multicellular organisms. Cells compartmentalize. They use membranes to carry out their metabolic processes. And then organelles themselves are also made up of membranes, maximizing the surface area for reactions to occur. If you look at some organs, they fold up to maximize that surface area to volume ratio. For example, in the small intestines, for example, in the lungs, in the alveoli in the lungs. So because the alveoli in the lungs fold up, they are maximizing the surface area in order for gas exchange. Because the small intestines fold up, they are maximizing surface area to volume ratio. Furthermore, if you look at this Mitochondria, they have what's known as cristae inside. Those cristae are folded in order to maximize surface area to volume ratio. So why does this compartmentalization of the cell organelles in eukaryotes lead to that greater surface area to volume ratios? Well, look at the shapes of the organelles individually. What do you notice about them? There are lots and lots of folds within these organelles. That's going to maximize my surface area to volume ratio, and that's going to enable my chemical reactions to occur at a rate that's consistent with maintaining homeostasis. So the difference between the largest and the smallest mammal in the world isn't going to be cell size, it's going to be cell number, where obviously the larger organism is going to have a larger number of cells. So again, as the cell gets larger, it requires more resources to be imported, more waste and products to be exported. Therefore, you need a larger volume requiring more exchange. So as the cell gets larger, the surface area to volume ratio gets smaller. And we don't want that because then the exchange process becomes less efficient. Our diffusion pathways are longer when I have a smaller surface area to volume ratio. What we want is a large surface area to volume ratio. That gives you a shorter and more efficient diffusion pathway. So in summary, the rate of metabolism of a cell is a function of its mass or of its volume. The rate of material exchange in and out of cells is a function of its surface area. And as that cell grows, the volume increases faster than the surface area, which will then decrease my surface area to volume ratio. And that's not what I want. I want a large surface area to volume ratio in order to maintain my metabolic rate. In other words, in order to maintain the materials coming in and the materials coming out. So in certain cases, there are organisms that benefit from a small surface area to volume ratio, and that would be in the case of a shrew, which is a small, warm-blooded mammal, because it would lose heat too quickly if it had a large surface area to volume ratio. Shrews would need to eat almost constantly in order to maintain their energy. Desert plants are another example. If their surface area to volume ratio was too big, they would lose water too fast. So in order to maintain and conserve water, they minimize their surface area to volume ratio. And some plants will even change their metabolism to save water, and those are known as CAM plants. So that's our discussion of surface area to volume ratio. Next time we will be discussing some more cell organelles.